Hey, and welcome to this very special VIP guest podcast for the Blue Screen Brothers. With me today, we have a frequent guest, Tatu Seppälä, who we had here before, but this time we have a distinguished and honored and named by Microsoft as a distinguished programmer, software believer.
Software legend. Their exact
software legend is the exact
legend.
title.
Yeah, there were a bunch of us back there. Jeff Richter, David Chappell, Javal Louie. They made us all software legends. It was fun.
And you are David Platt.
So indeed I am.
So
live long and prosper, everybody.
For those who don't know the software legend, who are you and what do you do?
Well, my name is David Platt. I've been working in the Microsoft space since Windows in 1990, and since Windows 3.0 came out. Learning how to program it in C, reading a book on Charles Petzold, and I started teaching it at Harvard University Extension School right here in Boston. And I taught software development for many years, and I kept upgrading with the technology as Microsoft changed it. They got into COM and OLE and ActiveX, and I got into that and started doing switch to C++. Wrote a couple of books on that, and then COM Plus came out, .NET came out, and I wrote Microsoft's lead book on .NET, introducing Microsoft.NET, and kept on teaching at Harvard Extension School. And then after a while, this happened sort of around 2005 or so, I started looking around, and users of software were not happy. They were really angry at their software. And I started looking at it, and I started trying to realize just what exactly the problem was with this. Why were users so unhappy with their software? And I started to talk to them. I started to look at it, started to research, and I figured out that the software was not really written with the users in mind. That the programmers were writing the software oriented to the way that they would structure the code internally and not with the user's thoughts in mind. And the users were being forced to learn how the programmers had written the software to become computer literate in the term of the day. And the users hated this, and it was fundamentally wrong. Classic example, you open a document in Microsoft Word, you make some changes, you go to close Word, and what does Word say? Oh, do you want to save the changes? And now everybody knows what it means. But at the time, users did not know. New users would say, what the heck is this? They click no, the things would disappear. And they were being forced to become more like computers. They were being forced to learn how the computer program worked internally. They were being forced to cater to the structure, the architecture of the way that the programmers had built the software. And they didn't like that. They aren't programmers. They don't think like programmers. They don't want to think like programmers. And that was kind of the main problem. And so it was all because, and still is all because, the developers of software do not understand who their users are, do not think about their users, and unconsciously they think, oh, well, the users must be like us. We use computers, they use computers. The users are just like us. So if we would like something, they would like something because they're just like us. And that is the fundamental rule, Platt's first, last, and only law of user experience, which is know thy user, for he is not thee. Your user is not you. Your user is not you. Your user is not you. Okay? Unless you're writing programs from burned out computer geeks, your user is not you. And
if you look into a mirror and say that 3 times, does a programmer appear behind you?
I've thought about that. Yes. There's no place like
home.
Yes, please do.
Here's a question though, David. Your writing has definitely sparked a polarizing thing.
Yes.
You've mentioned this multiple times yourself, like in 2018 in the MSDN magazine,
yes,
when you wrote "My Software Still Sucks."
That's it.
Do you what do you think this is? What do you think this topic and this assertion, seemingly logical assertion, is so polarizing?
Why is it so polarizing? Well, because I'm challenging the developer community and saying, hey, you know what, guys? You've been worshiping false gods. You have been solving the wrong problem. That 40 years ago, when you were writing software, when you were writing DOS and those programs, then your users were like you. The only people who used computers were programmers themselves. And it was this wonderful little fraternity. And there was this feeling that that software should not be easy to use. It should be difficult. So only the users that have proven themselves worthy of using of joining our fraternity of using our beloved computers, proven themselves through mental strife, are qualified to ascend to this Mount Olympus. And 40 years ago, that was, semi-true. But with the way that tech has pervaded society, and everybody is a user. My daughters were using PCs at ages 3 and 4, and that's not even all that young. My geek nephew, as Little's daughter, was 2 years old. She toddled over to the computer. She fingered to the big screen TV. She finger swiped it and cried when it didn't do anything. And they have this hangout that said, "Hey, we are the elite, and only the elite should use it." And no, it should not be. It should be hard. God damn it. And they do not like somebody telling them that, no, sorry, you've got to cater to the rest of humanity now, okay? Grow the heck up. And in fact, I'm quite proud. If you go look at the reviews on Amazon, and if you look just at the type, it only got 3.5 stars. But if you start looking at it, you'll find that almost all the reviews, roughly 2/3 of the reviews are 5 stars, and roughly 1/3 of the reviews are 1 star. And the 5-star reviews are people that say, "Oh, you speak for me. You give vent to my frustration, my pain that these guys are not taking care of me the way they should." And the 1/3 said, "God, what are you doing? You ripped the lid off our brilliant sausage factory." No, this is not what. It's not our job to take care of users. It's their job to become computer literate in the term of the day. Remember computer literacy? Was that before you were born? I remember.
No, definitely heard that when I was a kid.
Alan Cooper likes to say that a computer illiterate user is one that has been hurt so often that the scar tissue is so thick that he no longer feels the pain. Right? Classic example. You open Word, you make some changes in the document, you go to close Word, and Word says, "Oh, do you want to save changes?" Well, every single user, the first few times they use it, don't know what it is. They click no, the thing disappears, and they wonder what the hell it is. And eventually they realize that, they read in a copy from the disk, they make changes on the copy, they write it back to the disk, they don't write it back to the disk. Users should not need to know that. Now, if that question, it said, if the box comes up at the end and says, "Oh, throw away everything you just did," well, the user would know that instantly, wouldn't they? They would know exactly what that was. And they would say yes or no. Almost certainly they would say no. They would probably scratch their heads and say, "Why are they asking me such a damn fool question? Throw away everything I just did. Oh, please, don't. How often do I want to do that? Not that often." And so that's kind of how things are today. And it is the desire to protect their self-serving elite, if you will, that developers do not like being forced to contemplate their users. I was speaking of Tatu. You were saying you worked in security.
Yes, both me and Alex in different ways.
I went to Ignite in Chicago. That might have been 2015.
Right.
And Paula Yanuskevich was giving a talk, and I love to see her. I have the greatest respect for her. I sat up in the front row because I really wanted to hear her stuff. And she said, "Why do users do such and such a security brief?" Can't remember what it was. And the guy in the back shouts out, "Because users are stupid, that's why." Right?
Wow.
Now, I didn't say anything at the time, but I waited. I wouldn't interrupt Paula. I greatest respect. I wanted to hear everything she had to say. But at the end, when she was done, when people were walking out, I stood up and I announced in my room-filling voice, "Excuse me, sir. Users ignore that security thing because they are human. All right? And if you were expecting them to evolve into something other than human, then you, sir, are the one who's stupid." And I hate to use that word, man. That is the most toxic in the geek vocabulary. And you asked me not to swear online. I'm sorry. I apologize. But that thought, I'm sorry, that does not have a place in the modern software industry. It just doesn't. Maybe it did 40 years ago. Then again, maybe not. Today, no way, no how. Get that out of your heads.
It's the same.
The last time I struggled with that was I bought myself a Sony camera, one of those compact cameras. It was really good. It had very you could take photos in low light and everything. It was super clear. But in order to film 240 pictures a second, you needed a special memory card. So it's still SD card, and you put in the memory card into the camera, and it says you need a UHS Class 3 memory card. I eject the card, and it says UHS Class 3. And she's like, what am I not getting? What it failed to say was that it needed to be an SDXC. So it needed to be 64 gigs larger. I only had 32 because the user manual had the full story, but the display on the camera kind of skipped the part of XDSC. So I was struggling for 2 days trying to software update, firmware update, download, sideload, find everything.
Yeah.
And I wasn't alone in finding that problem. So again, I was probably one of the stupid users until I eventually figured out that, all right, let's try the paper user manual.
20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, you might have said that. Today, that is not an acceptable thing to do. It's at the very least, it should have been obvious for what you needed. When you selected that mode, it should say, oh, well, this is what you need. Ideally, click here to order one delivered by FedEx tomorrow, if they were smart. But to force you to go back, I would argue that, years ago, user manuals and even online help, like with Word or something like that, was an important thing. You hit F1. It was one of the standardizations in Windows that when you were lost in an app, you would hit F1 and up would come the help. In fact, context-sensitive help, figuring out where you were in the app and bringing up help for where you appeared to be, what you were trying to do. That was a big deal. Back in WordPerfect, for DOS, if I recall, help was Shift F7. You had to have a keyboard template to find it. But now, even that, having to look something up in a manual is no longer an acceptable thing. It really, I like to say, I can't remember where I stole this from, but your computer's user interface is like a joke. If you have to explain it, it's not a very good one.
Ooh. We can do that for security as well. If you need to, I always do this the same way, because if your user come with a problem, let's say that, hey, I want to do this with my software, for instance. Hey, I want to share a file from SharePoint with someone externally from the company.
Yes.
But it says that I'm not allowed to share anything with anyone from the outside of the company. Now, if you need to explain this person that it is because of security reasons, well, you kind of have failed in understanding the business use case for this employee. So, yeah. Well,
one thing I found helpful with that, and for people in the shoes of the security person like you, a friend of mine, David Webster, used to work for Microsoft. We did a big world tour in 2005, and he taught me to say the phrase, the guy comes to you and says, hey, I want to do this. And it doesn't sound like the right thing. You say, why do you want to do this? And right away, you're in his face. He wants to do something. You're telling me he can't. And so ideally, you try and get off a straight line. You don't want to meet chest by chest. Try to offset just a little, and don't respond to what he's asking you to do. But instead, you say, what problem are we really trying to solve here? And don't respond to the specific technical request at all, really. Just say, Toyota was famous for the 5 whys. Well, we want to do this. Well, why do you want to do this? Oh, because we need to do that. Well, why do you want to do that? Well, something else. And then you work back 5 or until you find the root cause, basically. But don't say, why are you doing that? Because then you're challenging them to defend that particular solution, which is precisely not the point. Instead, you're saying, okay, so interesting. Tell me what problem are we really trying to solve here? Oh, well, this guy needs the quotes for the product next week. Okay. What problem is that trying to solve? Well, it's the end of the month. We need to use up the budget, whatever the heck it is. And okay, well, how do they get their stuff? Well, would an email work? I mean, does he need, et cetera, et cetera. And
so you're kind of going back to first principles. What I hear here, trying to kind of disassemble the request into what's really being what is the person trying to accomplish here,
exactly.
Which is really probably what security solutions should also do, and people who build them, to try to really crystallize what the risk is we're trying to mitigate here. It's so easy to get lost in trying to block things just because you can, trying to prevent things because you have a shiny toy that can do it.
Yes, I see that so often in security, and then they wave the magic. Oh, it's for security reasons, and then fine. What problem are we trying to solve? Classic example. how many years were we told to change our passwords every month or 2 months or 3 months? And in fact, the systems often required that. Say your password expired, you had to change it. And
it hurts. It still hurts when you need to do that.
It still hurts when you need to do that. And users strike back. When users feel that their time is being wasted, that they are being asked to do things that do not make sense, then they have what I call the hassle budget. It is the amount of security-related, or for that matter, other overhead that they are willing to tolerate. And if you exceed their hassle budget, they will do one of two things. They will either come up with a workaround, or they will say to hell with you and throw your thing away. And classic example, changing passwords. Well, what do you make them change their password? What do? They change the very last character, don't they? And
or digit, which is the second last, or the second last, which is the digit.
Yeah, or in very high security, the second to last. All right. Now, if the security guys had said, and in 2019, summer of 2019, just before COVID, Microsoft changed their security guidance. They said, you know what, you don't need to do this anymore. This is more trouble than it's worth. You know, it does not give you any kind of because users do that. They will make it was one of my last MSDN columns before they killed the book in the fall of 2019. Was responding to this, quoting the Microsoft security guy saying, well, they would make the smallest possible change, and it's just not worth the trouble. So it exceeded the user's hassle budget. There was more trouble that they were going to. And if they ask the security guru, okay, why are we doing this? Oh, well, security reasons. That's why we're doing it. But if somebody asks, in fact, I will ask you, what problem does changing the password every 3 months, say, which was a fairly common interval, I think that's when I had a Microsoft login, that's what I had to do. What problem does changing the password every 3 months solve?
I don't know what kind of problem it surely solves, unless you someone guesses your password and kind of snooping around. But I sure know that it kind of introduces some new problems.
It does, very much so. Because if you change it, what happens? The users, and if you make them change it, if you make them come up with a whole new random password, you could force them to do that, but they can't remember it. So what do? They write it down on a Post-it note. You can't get around the hassle budget. Human beings are human.
I remember my favorite story there. I had a teacher. I used to be internal IT for a municipality. So we had, I think it was 17 schools. And I needed to fix one of the laptops, and the teacher wasn't there. So I was sitting there with the laptop lid closed down. So I just opened the laptop lid, and there was like this small Post-it notes all over with a username and website. So where to log in, the username. I just all right, I can live with that. That's fine. They haven't written down the password. It kind of gives them some help. And then I unplugged all the cords for the laptop. It was cable Ethernet. There was like external display. It was this is pre-docking station era. And I unplugged the power, and I lift up the laptop, and the same layout, same color sticker, only password written down.
You go. The users felt that they were being forced to do more work than they were willing to do, and they said, "Heck with it! If we get hacked, it's not my problem." And so if you think about it, there are a couple of really good articles by Cormac Hurley, works for Microsoft Research. One is called "Where do security policies come from?" is the one I like best. The other one is "So long and no thanks for the externalities, the rational rejection of security advice by users." But he did this research with, I want to say Dino Florencio, I'd have to go look that up. And he went and said, okay, where are the security requirements the most stringent? And he did, he looked at Amazon, he looked at Fidelity, he looked at banks, he looked at schools. Oh, yes, that's an excellent one. That's exactly the one. Dine Valencia. If you look at this, we performed a study of password policies at 75 different sites, top, high, medium traffic sites, universities, banks, brokerages, government sites, et cetera, et cetera. That's exactly the one. And he said the greatest security efforts were required not where the thing that you're guarding is the most valuable, like on the finance companies. It wasn't that hard. The banks, they never make you change your password, for example. But rather at government sites and educational sites, where the relationship can easily be changed, whereas it's hard to walk away from your school, even if they are being bastards about it, as opposed to Amazon. If Amazon made you change your password every 3 months, how often would you buy something from them? And the answer is a whole lot less. And so Amazon would bear the cost of bad usability. And whereas your school, you've got a whole lot less choice. Friend of mine teaches at a school that I probably better not name, that just brought in a new password policy. You have to change your password every month. And it has to be at least 20 characters long, and it has to have at least 4 numbers in it and 2 special characters. Now, a human being cannot do this. All right.
We can do this offline, David, because me and Tatu are going to have some talk with them.
All right. I will be happy to forward your contact info. But in practice, even writing it down on a Post-it note doesn't work for that. They have to. Basically, you have to put it in your browser's password manager because nothing else is going to work. So. Human beings are human. Stop me if I get too technical here. And they are likely to remain human, no matter how much you might wish they would evolve into something more logical. I mean, the guys at the U.S. Navy for the Trident nuclear submarines who go into the National Security Agency bunker and come out with the codes chained to their wrist and take them onto the submarine. Yes, you can make them comply with the rules. You if they don't, you shoot them. But Amazon cannot do that with their customers. And almost nobody can force their users to exceed their hassle budget and understand who they are. Know that user. They aren't a date. Where have I heard that before? Who they are, what they feel they're guarding, and how much trouble they're willing to go to. So, what's
this term hassle budget has been excellent. Yes. We kind of picked up on it immediately.
Sure.
And I did want to ask, do you see proper communication as between the people who design, whether it be software or solutions, and the people who use them? Proper communication between them, can it expand the hassle budget to some extent?
Can you expand the hassle budget to some extent?
Through communication and explaining the rationale why things are hard.
You can certainly try. And your life will be somewhat better than if you don't try. You might be able to increase it a little bit. I doubt you'll be able to increase it very much. Famous last words, go ahead and give it a try. It partly depends on the relationship that you have with that person. If Amazon said, okay, we need a 12-character password now, that's Amazon's relationship with their customers is very, very casual. You can go to almost any other website and buy almost anything. And so could Amazon do that? Not really. At a college, could you say, hey, look, we need to switch to 12-character passwords? You could try to, because, just saying, oh, for security reasons, it's, how is the landscape? What has changed? Why were 8 characters okay on Monday, but on Tuesday we need 12? What in the world has changed here to force us to put in that extra effort every single time? It's kind of a hard sell. So go ahead and try. I'd be surprised if you got very much very often. I won't say hell no, but neither would I bet any money on it. So
you can't really communicate your way out of a poor UX, right?
Yeah, I think you kind of describe a very important thing that could relate to piracy versus streaming services.
Mm-hmm.
The entire business industry of Spotify, Netflix, Hulu, whatever, is that it's just slightly more convenient than piracy.
That's kind of it. And they're really selling that convenience. I wrote about that. You remember Napster years and years ago?
Heard of it? Yeah.
Yes. You rip music from CDs, you put it on your disc, and then you published it so other people could see what you had, and you could swap things. And the recording industry tried really hard to shut it down, and they won a few court cases and stuff. I said, no, you guys, you're missing the point. That hey, you could do this. A clear conscience. It was not available any other way. You could not go to Napster Napster. You could not go to Spotify or Songs or any of the or YouTube Music or the Apple Store. You couldn't get it anywhere else. And I said, hey, if you go out there, if you make it convenient, more people will buy it, and a lot more have. And you're absolutely right. I agree. It is not hard to pirate anything, but if you make it easier. Now, if I were to confess to pirating this or that TV show, I would be confessing to a crime. So I am not going to. But in the course of my research, I've some users of pirate sites that have shared their data with me. Okay, have said, yeah, it's not too bad. Every once in a while, it craps out and it spins around for a while. I have to restart it, and sometimes you can't get the thing you want, and I'll watch something else. It doesn't cost that much, to Napster for what are they? $15 a month now? I mean, you can't get 2 fancy coffees at Starbucks for that $15 a month. And
True.
yes, it is very much a convenience thing. I can borrow DVDs from my library, DVDs of music from my public library, and buy them and not pay anybody for them.
And that's also where you kind of come into the next part, because libraries can tolerate that people are not, they're not driving 15 minutes to the library, showing up, standing in line, finding a dog chew cover of a DVD you want to watch.
You're right.
Because it's so much more convenient just to pay the $12-15 a month and
Sure
just stay at home.
Just click. You don't have to go out in the snow. I know you guys in the Nordic countries don't really care about it because you know how to deal with it, but the rest of us, poor lazy American slobs. What? I have to get off my couch? Oh, please, don't give me. I'm not. Here's my credit card. I'm not getting on that.
Yeah. That's one of the kind of brings up the second immutable law of security, which is that security only works if the secure way also happens to be the easy way.
That's the key. Your users will do whatever is easiest, no matter what. And if you can make the secure thing, the safe thing, be easier, they will do it. And instead of trying to get them to do more work to be safer, hey, how can we make them safer with even less work? One of my favorite analogies. What is the best method of birth control? You tell me.
Oh, I'm not touching that.
Go ahead, touch it.
I don't have anything that's appropriate for the recording.
Take a guess. Just guess one. Okay, whichever one you guess, I'm going to say
stay
wrong.
Stay at home and write software.
Okay. Well, being a software geek, what do software geeks use for birth control? Their personalities. I get it, but it's
your words, not mine, though.
But anyway, the answer is okay. What is the best diet for losing weight? What is the best exercise for getting in shape? What is the best way of keeping your files safe in the event of a disk crash? What is the best way of restraining occupants protecting occupants in a car crash? And I will tell you, the answer to all 5 of those things is the same. So now take a guess. I will not keep you and my readers on tenterhooks anymore. I will tell you the answer, and that, my friends, it is the one that you use.
Oh,
it does not
seat
matter
belts.
how good.
Yeah.
Seat belts. Do you fasten the seat belts? Well, that's why we have airbags. The birth control. It is the one that you use. Does not matter how well it would have been if you'd done it. The thing that you actually do, backing up your hard drive. Remember, you used to have to back it up on floppies. Oh, dating myself again. You had that program called, what was it? I can't remember what it's called anymore. It was complicated. You had to set up, it's in my Watch Software Sucks rant. I haven't used it in years because but you had to put in floppies and you had to configure the backup and stuff like this. And it was a pain in the ass. And so nobody ever did it. You did it once and it would take an hour. But instead, I now have Carbonite, which is an automatic online backup. It hooks the operating system. Whenever it sees a data file open for editing, it waits and sees it, and when it's saved back to the disk, it copies it up to their internet storage. So you don't have to touch it. It's always there. It's always in the background. And when your computer croaks, it's there. So that is a really good example of safety provided by at essentially no effort, but exactly zero effort by the user except coughing up your credit card once a year.
Buying a Dropbox that saves your documents and do all of that service for you, and you can access it from your mobile or tablet or whatnot, OneDrive, whatever. It's a very good story, and exactly. I think you have 2 terms. That's the hassle budget In one of your books, the Why Software Sucks and What You Can Do About It, you term you coin the term of hassle budget.
Yes.
And the second one is that users are lazy. And I think that's a very, very neat thing, because I need to check my files, and you don't want to get up from your couch to go to your computer in your basement to check your files. You want to do that from your phone, from your tablet, from your laptop, from whatever your device. Again, I'm going to throw that back to you. What is the best device to check your files?
To check your files, to preserve your files?
No, to check your files. You have an email or whatever, to read your data.
The best to read. I'm sorry, I'm not understanding the question.
The one in your hand.
The one in your. Okay, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it doesn't matter if it's a So it doesn't matter where. You remember Windows 95, 98, Millennium, 2000 XP.
Yes. It was a painful memory, but yes.
And it's just like, oh, is that file on my laptop? Did I remember to email myself the latest version of that one? So so I really love the convenience that it's both it's a service, but it's also security.
I agree with Platt's third law of the universe. In fact, I think you'll find this in my .NET book back in, holy shit, was that 2003? Gosh, it's old enough to drink in the U.S. now. Anyway, the Platt's third law of the universe, which is laziness trumps everything. Every human being ever born is inherently lazy, can be relied upon to do the absolute minimal work they can possibly get away with under any and all circumstances. Correct? Of course.
Well, yes.
Okay.
Regardless of whether you're a so-called end user or an IT pro.
Everybody
admin is a lazy admin, right?
You're human, you're lazy. Okay. Therefore, first corollary, that which is easy to do will be done frequently, whether it should be or not. And that which is difficult to do will be done infrequently, whether it should be or not. Okay? You agree with that? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Therefore, second corollary, a good design makes the good, smart, safe things easy to do, and the bad, dangerous, stupid things hard to do. So that's
and I hear 10,000 security admins listening to this and just change themselves. Let's make all the bad things really hard and then forget about making the good things easy.
Well, sorry, it needs to go both ways. I guess you make the bad things harder, but whatever is the easiest thing will be done more. So if you, for example, fingerprint readers, they make it easier to remember your to authenticate a phone than having to type in your code. I tried the optical recognition on my phone. But I found that too often I was doing it in low light situations, like in bed where it's dark or something like that, and that did not work well enough. So they made it too hard. I just turned it off. I can't be bothered. Don't tell
you. Can I actually ask one more thing? I just have to ask this one.
Go ahead.
Do you have any advice to, let's say, security pros on how to get a crash course on the real behavior of the people they serve, the end users in their organization?
A crash course on the real behavior. I've written about this, and it's in Joy of UX. In fact, if you want, I could read you the paragraph. Would that be helpful?
Fine by me, absolutely. If you have a fitting.
All right,
yes,
please do.
Yes.
If that's okay, I will bring that out. It's in it's on my hard drive here. It's in chapter 7. Come on, bring it up.
I wish you had it in the other book you had, because I could just browse through it.
Well,
that would be so much faster.
Yeah. Yes, you're absolutely right. It would be, but that's here we go. Okay, this is I could share this with you. I could. How the hell do I share my screen on? How can I share my screen here? I could share.
It is shared. I can see your book.
Okay.
Tatu is sharing. All right.
Share
Share
the
and
window.
then,
Share the entire screen. I'm going to share my whole screen. And
We got to
then
talk to
I'm
Microsoft on that,
over
because
to
when
here.
David can't find
Okay.
find out how
There.
to share the screen, we need to fix that.
I can't argue with that. Anyway, okay, are you seeing my screen now?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, you see where it says bury the hatchet?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, try this. Security and usability guys often see themselves as adversaries. Scott Adams' famous comic strip These Flames with a character named Mordak the Preventer. I tried to get this cartoon in there, but my editor wouldn't let me. So go Google for Mordak the Preventer. He values security far more than usability, believing that in a perfect world, no user could ever make use of anything, et cetera, et cetera. And here, I'm writing to the usability guys. But I said, have you ever tried sitting down with the security people and just chatting? Not even necessarily about imminent business, just, hey, how are you? Don't the Red Sox stink this year? That's the Boston baseball team. They're famous for sucking. It's surprising how often no one ever has. They, the security guys, might be a little suspicious at first, but if you don't immediately try telling them how to run their practices, they might open up to you. Invest in a box of donuts once in a while. Pick a specific example from Beyond Fear, which is Bruce Schneier's book, which I like very much. Try that one. And ask them what they think. Eat lunch with them if you can. Maybe offer to start a security usability discussion group. They'd probably like a little love, and they might settle for just a little less hatred. So,
Excellent.
So that would be so a crash course. No, not really, but a path to start following. That would be a good one. Say, hey, 10 o'clock Monday morning, first Monday of every month, donuts in the counter. We'll talk about security and usability. Say, just to sort of get the now, of course, the problem you then run into is the self-selection. The guys who will come and talk to you are the guys that are interested in this kind of thing, and you're looking for the great unwatched masses who really don't care. They just want things to be easy. But
it's kind of fun how you kind of dragged in Mordak into this,
because did you ever see that?
Because I've been reading kind of the Dilbert Principle, the book Dilbert Principle.
Yes.
And it's so funny to see that many of the cartoon strips that is being drawn in the 90s, early 90s, we still struggle with the same very problem today. And how kind of cubicles, they hate cubicles in Dilbert, but have they ever tried open landscapes? It's kind of it's kind of
either.
Yeah, it's kind of, you miss the cubicle, and kind of to summarize the Dilbert from 2000. This book of yours from 2006, it's kind of, we haven't moved far.
We really haven't, not as much. When I look at rewriting that book, certainly there are some things that are still the same. Though the user not the is going to be the same. There's that's it. That's the one. I stare directly at the sun. I wanted that cartoon in that, but my editor said no, we can't put in cartoons. We don't have the rights to do it. And what can I say? And that's the one. You got it. So parts of it are still the same. They don't know who their users are. They're forcing the users to learn how their programs are built, and it's fundamentally wrong. Same time, like I have a whole thing about Flash, using Flash in websites, and now you had to wait for Flash to load, and they did all these stupid, pointless animations, just dancing stuff to show that they could. Well, that I can take out because Flash is no longer a factor. But that chapter all about Microsoft, well, at the time, Microsoft was the 900-pound gorilla, and it spoke. Well, you read it. It spoke as Google is the new baby on the block, and now, of course, I have to write something about the big five in tech, or the big four, because I don't really count Facebook; they're irrelevant. But Microsoft, Apple, Google, and Amazon, those guys kind of rule the tech world, and that chapter to talk about all four of them and stuff like that. But it's still, a lot of the stuff is still the same. And it's going to be a fun rewrite. I can't decide whether to go back to my original publisher or try somebody new. I wonder if we tried selling Why Software Sucks to civilians. We tried paying for space at Barnes & Noble, just right inside the front door where you walk in, and it's sitting right there so people see it. And Barnes & Noble said, no, we're not going to take your money. We don't put computer books there. They don't sell. It was just the word software turned off civilians, I believe. it was a pretty good seller in the geek space, but it never crossed over into the civilian space. And I wrote it for civilians. The quote on the opening quote on the cover is from my barber. You saw that one, and I would run every chapter by my barber and the lady at my public library to make sure that they could understand it. And
Stacy Bartelli, indeed. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
She's my barber. And software is.
Can we challenge you to provide some advice for security pros of today? Like, what would you say to the people we work with, the security pros? Are they the bad guys now, or are the users stupid?
No, the users are not stupid, and don't use that word to me again. And it's sorry, okay, but if you find yourself thinking that, well, you are stuck with your users, and they are where they are going to be, and you aren't going to move them very much, very often. So that's a fundamental rule of life, basic as rock and gravity, and they are who they're going to be, and you're not going to change them very much, very quickly, very often. And so you will either learn how to deal with them and figure out how to deal with them as best you can, or you're going to be banging your head against the wall for rather painfully for a very long time. Now, again, if you are the U.S. Navy and you want to have the guys follow the rules, yeah, you can take them out and have them shot. It's not easy, but you really have to, education. If you're going to have education, hey, do this, don't do that. You have to be willing to make examples. Like if you catch a medical establishment that I deal with once in a while, a doctor of my acquaintance said, we caught somebody with a couple of the young doctors with files of passwords. We had to fire them, and we did it publicly. So don't do that. So if you're going to try and force people, you got to be ready to have them, the equivalent of having them shot. I guess. What is the secret? I will tell you exactly what the secret is. You've heard it once or twice before, which is know thy user for they are not thee. Know who they are and understand what kind of relationship you have with them. And that will give you some notion about the amount of hassle that they're willing to go to. Amazon, their customers will not do very much work in order to avoid there. Now I write about Amazon. They do not depend. How often do they make me change my password? Essentially never. Fidelity, same thing. When do they make me change? Because users would go somewhere else if you did that to them. They would not put up with it. Your customers would not put up with it. So how do they get more security? And the answer is they work in layers. If you look on Amazon, there's your user ID and password. And they'll even if they have unauthorized intrusions, they will check for the patterns on your account, see what you're buying. They will make sure that you're only shipping to accounts that for which you've already entered your credit card and stuff like this. So there are these different layers. And so it's not just the password providing the whole security. There are all these different layers under the hood. Credit card companies. Every once in a while, one of my credit card numbers will get stolen. And I almost always find out about it by getting a call from the credit card company. Hey, you know what? Were you in Santa Monica, California last week? Because we got a credit card charge from there. Was that you? And he said, well, no, it wasn't. I said, we're very sorry. Here, we'll send you a new card. Thank you for using your XYZ credit card, and then have a nice day. So, understanding that relationship is number one. Number two, working in layers. Paula Yanuskevich, I remember her talking about one of the things that they do is one of the things that is done in the security industry. I cannot speak to what she does or does not do, but she's talked about. I've heard her talk about this happening in the security. They will drop a USB stick somewhere, on a company, and somebody will find the USB stick. And what the hell do you do with the USB stick? Well, I'll just plug it in and see whose it is. Well, not a great thing.
And of course, you use the company PC because they have the best antivirus.
Yeah, of course they do. And,
it's more secure.
Right. So and so the right answer is bring it to the security department. The wrong answer, what a lot of people do, is they stick it in their PC to see who it is. And you have to be willing. And if you're going to do a trap like that, you have to be willing to make examples of them. fire their sorry asses and stuff like that. So understand the relationship that you have with them, and work within what that relationship is. Medical confidentiality. There's also a regulatory environment. For example, the medical regulatory environment in the U.S. is more stringent than the e-commerce regulatory environment. If you leak somebody's medical data, you have done a bad thing, and you will get your wrist slapped. So the rules are tighter. I was talking to a diet therapist, and she asked me for my user ID, and she said, "What's your password?" And I flipped. I yelled at her. I demanded her supervisor. I went to you do not ever ask somebody for their password. If you need to authenticate somebody, there are ways of doing it without giving up the ground jewels. And she just I don't know whatever happened to her. I stormed out of there and then haven't been back. But understanding the kind of relationship that you have with them, and understanding where their hassle budget is, because they will not exceed it. And
yes, that's golden. That's one of the best terms I've heard. The hassle budget. Even the concept rarely gets discussed in at least in my daily work. The situations I've been in, the people I've worked with, it's really been kind of eye-opening to coin it that way. Gonna start using that.
Here's another thing. I asked about this. Goes back to the password changes, and continue to ask. Okay, what problem does it solve? Well, what problem does the password, the changing of password, solve? Well, if you work on that, well, the answer sort of is, well, if somebody steals a password, what are they going to do with that password? Well, they could try to steal information. They could try to transfer money out or something like that. But the problem is that if anybody steals a password or buys a stolen password or whatever on the black market or what have you, they will know that, like finding a stolen credit card, that it's going to be shut off pretty soon. As soon as the theft is discovered, that's going to be shut off instantly. And so they will use it right away, so that they can, because they know that it has very little value over the long term. And so, resetting your password every 3 months, well, if a password gets stolen, on average, there's a month and a half until they reset it. So that's really not going to it doesn't solve that problem. It solves the problem of an employee leaves and you forget to turn off his network access. Well, that ought to be the top of every checklist. Turn off their network, ideally the day before you fire them. So that's not a real problem. But the only real problem it would solve is if your password gets stolen, and the bad guy uses that password to get into the network and just look around, not steal anything, not changing it. There was an author, a mystery author, I think his name was Jacques Futrell. He had a character named the Thinking Machine. He was a super detective, and he used to say they're really clever criminals are never caught because their crimes are never discovered. Nobody ever discovers the fact that the bad guy has done something like this. And so sort of conceptually, a guy from Yahoo steals a Microsoft login and can use the Microsoft employee system, download that to find employees with the right skills so they can send them job offers to poach them away from Microsoft. That sort of thing. Changing the password might just prevent that. And then again, might not. So, is that worth making everybody change the passwords every 3 months? Well, it would if the new password was random, but it never is because it's too much hassle. Plus, if you changing the password takes a long time. If you do it right, you have a brand new random one. You have to memorize it. And then you can't write it down because you're not allowed to do that. So you have to have a new random one and then write it down and change it every 3 months. Well, human beings can't do that. And then you have the opportunity cost of employees that are locked out of their PCs and they can't get in. And so that costs you money. So, think carefully what problem you're trying to solve. What is it costing you today? What is the cost of these changes that you're making? I mean, think about it rationally. The best Bruce Schneier book I read on the topic is was it Beyond Fear? That's the one. Beyond Fear by Bruce Schneier. That's the one where he talks about the various prevention, detection, response, mitigation, and what are the costs of these things? What's the cost of prevention? What's the I like to say an ounce of cure is not worth 5 pounds of prevention. So think carefully about what these are. It's not a knee-jerk response. Understand who your users are, understand what your relationship with them is, and what it'll tolerate. And the more rigid you are, the more control you are requiring over your users, and that's tricky. It depends on what your relationship with them is. So
I love this one cartoon I saw
sure.
a couple of years ago where
Yeah.
you saw the manager kind of frustrating, boiling his eyes, just of what are you talking about? And it turned out that the IT security was so bad that any hacker could just waltz over the firewall,
Yep.
but the end user couldn't log in because the CAPTCHA was too hard. And we've all done the CAPTCHA. The CAPTCHAs, let's just face it, they don't work. They solve a problem, but they introduce another one because many of the CAPTCHAs, I can't read them.
Very true. We got the intelligence of the image recognition is so good now that has stopped working. It 20 years ago, maybe 10, it might have worked okay. Okay. Yes. Okay. I agree with that one. Yes. No, that user is not the. Your user is a burned out computer geek. But and when I go to a CAPTCHA, and they don't have CAPTCHAs on Amazon, and it is a stumbling block. It is one more difficulty that your user has to solve. And when I run into it, I said, gosh, do I really want this? Do I care about this site that I'm going to enough to work my way through this? And the answer is usually not. It's if you're hassle budget applies to somebody that's looking to do business with you as well. When I find it too difficult in a store, if the lines are too long or something like that, I will go to the manager and say, hey, look, you know what? There is a limit to how hard I'm willing to bang my head against the wall to get you to take my money, and it's not real high, right? If I'm buying tickets to a Bruce Springsteen concert, I'll put up with a certain amount of hassle, and then again, maybe not because I'm too cranky. But
if I want coffee, I don't want to stand in line for 20 minutes. I go to Coke vending machine.
Yes, or I'll go back to my office and make a cup of tea, or I've got a curry, and behind you, forget. I'm just not going to do that. And so, any site that I go to that has a CAPTCHA before I can do anything, well, it's that much more trouble to go to those guys. And I feel, I understand the problem that you have. I understand that bots are crawling and stealing all your stuff. Some of my websites get thousands of hits per week from bots, and I just and I won't say it's easy, but annoying your customers is just not a real good first look, So
and for security folks, the customer is the business user here.
It is, yeah. Definitely is. So, that's, Amazon, if you had to solve a CAPTCHA to get into buy a book from Amazon, how often would they do that? They will not. And what do? You go there and you click buy with one click or buy with what's the
express checkout and whatnot.
Express checkout here. It's buy now. That's what the button says. Buy now. And I had to turn that off because I was buying too much stuff, and they understand that having an ongoing relationship is immensely valuable to them and keeping you logged in for 2 weeks. So if you don't have to put in your user ID and password, you just have to say, bang, send me another case of dental floss or what have you. And that is of immense value for them. And they have, they require you to put in your new, if you want something shipped to a new address, then you have to type in the credit card number over again. And users are more or less willing to do that because they're already typing in the new address. And so getting out their credit card is not as big a hassle. And that is what problem are we trying to solve? Well, we're trying to solve the problem of somebody who gets their Amazon login and wants to send something expensive to a different address to steal something expensive. So they have a real reason for that scenario for what problem they're trying to solve. In fact, I was talking to a client once. They wanted me to do something for them. I can't quite remember what. And I said, fine, you got to send me a new PC to work on because I'm not going to put that junk on my own PCs. And here's the one. And they went to Amazon and tried to send me that PC. And Amazon wouldn't do it. They said, sorry, we will only send that, something that valuable to the billing address on the credit card.
Ooh.
And which, I kind of see. Something that's, multi-$1,000 and very easy to resell. They'll only use the address that they know that it works, that they know that it's the correct address. So, that's I just needed some statements from Fidelity, and they were sending them in paper, and they said, we will only send these to the account of record, to the address of record of the account. I said, that's just fine. That's where I live. Just send them right there. That's if I wanted them sent to Romania, that'd be a different kind of problem.
So we need to kind of wrap up this podcast.
Certainly.
This
What can I have? I'm happy to. Thank you so much for inviting. It was fun.
What would be your one thing if you could just, if you were to decide decide for all of IT for just one day and just fix one thing, what would be that one thing?
You know what it is, man. Know thy user, he is not thee. Think about who your user is. Know your user, understand your user. You don't even have to like them. You don't have to love it. You don't even have to like them. You just have to care about their money. Know that user. Your user is not you. Designed for your user and not, yes, that's it. Designed for your user and not yourself. That's it.
Amen.
All right.
Amen.
Thank you, David.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure, such an honor to have you on here.
It's been wonderful on my end. If you want me to fly to the Nordics and give a talk there, I would enjoy that. In fact, I'm going to Iceland in 2 weeks. I'd be happy to come to you guys one of these days.
Let's
remember to hit those. There's the volcanic pools over there. I hear they're all the rage.
Brand new ones. Yes.
All right, I'll just stop recording now. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you.
Thank you, Tata. Thank you, Alex. It's been a pleasure.